Shadow work. What is our shadow? How does it affect our lives? Where did it come from? And how the heck do we heal this thing? Watch this video. Most of us on this planet have been socialized, meaning we've been taught the tools and the rules to survive in this society. The problem is our society is very unevolved in some ways. And so this is what happens. We create a shadow. Those parts of ourselves that don't fit this system, whether it be our tribe, our family, our educational system, or society at large, those parts of ourselves that we have grown to understand as not good enough, not fitting the mold, we put in the shadow. We actually self-reject. We abandon those parts of ourselves because they appear as threats to our survival. And so we put them in the shadow. And here's the thing. You can't deny wholeness. You are whole whether you are consciously whole or not. Those parts in the shadow are subconscious. So whether you are whole or unconsciously whole, that is still in your existence. And what happens is that plays out in your life as an opportunity to be reintegrated on a regular basis. But the thing is, people don't understand this process, so we get really confused and really triggered, and we almost feel traumatized over and over again by certain events in our lives because the universe is bringing it to us to reintegrate parts of ourselves, but we don't get it, and it scares us because those are the things that made us feel like we weren't accepted and loved in the first place, and so we continue to reject it and continue to feel unwhole. So, shadow work is about reintegrating those parts of ourselves that we abandoned in the first place, and the reason this work is so painful is because what we come to realize as we're honest. If you guys are in Soul Lab, you know what I'm talking about. You get real about how you feel so that you can heal. You're honest about it. You start to realize that you had to abandon these parts of yourselves because others had abandoned those parts of yourselves so that you could fit into a system that's not even really right for you in the first place. What a lot of us start to wake up to is the reality that we were here to be the change that this system so desperately needs, but we were so unempowered in that way that we didn't have our own tools that are now in our subconscious self to come forward and be that change. But now we are. And here's the thing. So this process is very painful sometimes because, well, most of the time, but you can handle it, because we are reintegrating this understanding that we had to reject ourselves in the first place, that parts of ourselves were rejected in the first place. And that's very, very painful, that you reject a truth to fit a mold. It's very hard to take sometimes. But when you really do the forgiveness work, which is the second step, you really realize that people only do as good as they can do. If we would have known better, we would have done better. If they would have known better, they would have done better. So now is kind of the time where we kind of elevate to understanding that it's a global issue, it's a planet issue, it's a society issue, it's not a tribal issue, it's not just your family or your school system or it's literally the consciousness, the collective consciousness that we live in right now. So to be the change is to become conscious, to become light. So consciousness work is all about tapping into that shadow and allowing things that trigger you to be. Feel it to heal it. You feel it, you allow it, you acknowledge it, and you let it go. You acknowledge it to come in. You look at the beliefs attached to that fear. Why do you keep repeating this behavioral pattern to keep you away from the thing you're afraid of? Because the only reason things are in the shadow is because you won't look at it. So it's in the dark. And the things in the dark really scare you. It's so scary right now. It's dark. We're afraid of what we don't know. We're afraid of the stuff in the dark, so we think it's way scarier than it really is. And we have this projected idea of what that will mean and what that really is in the first place, right? But what I want to encourage you guys to do is to look at the places that scare you. In my healing, it was instrumental to every day have a practice to look at one thing that scared me. And what I did is, instead of letting those things kind of limit me and continue to allow me to be not completely authentic. That's the thing. When we're not living authentically, because we're some parts of us in the shadow, we feel not free. And when you feel authentic and you're being authentic, you're free. And at some point in your journey, it definitely happened for me, you get real tired of the fakeness. You get real tired of not just being real and not just being how you are and telling people how you feel. And that vulnerability and honesty that you share creates the connection that we all long for. Because the thing that happens with shadow is you feel isolated because part of yourself is not being seen. So the real healing of your shadow, the integration of your own wholeness, is allowing yourself to be seen, whether they like it or not, because you know that you'll never reject you. And that's the key. We're also afraid that we won't be accepted or acknowledged or connected with. And the funny thing is, it's never about them. It's about the fact that you've always agreed with them for not connecting or accepting you. Now, when other people don't accept the truth of you, you still get to. And what you'll see time and time again is you start to awaken and you start to get really strong. You start to feel that inner power and you start to have really intuitive thoughts and things like this and synchronicities because you're no longer agreeing with the rejection of the shadow. People reject you, you put it in the shadow. You stand in the light, they reject you, you stay in the light, you're always in the light. So my friends, this is how we start to heal our shadow, is we have the courage and the commitment to ourselves, to be ourselves, to stand in ourselves, to show ourselves, and to love ourselves. Have a beautiful week. Namaste.